is.
One of the few things I remember after coming out of surgery was being in critical care and a lot of pain. While I was in critical care, I was hooked up to so many machines, I felt like part of the Borg Collective from Star Trek. The Borg Collective is made out of organic material and machine parts. You can probably figure out why I thought I was going to become part of the collective. Thymectomy is a major surgery. There are risks of bleeding, collapsed lungs, and post-operative infection. Pain near the incision is definitely to be expected, and some people even have back pain after the surgery. No one warned me that I could feel numb from the neck down for a few hours after the surgery, but I did. Because of that, I was quite scared. The numbness went away after a few hours. Because of anesthesia and the stress of surgery, patients with MG are sometimes temporarily weaker. If a patient has other medical problems, they may have more complications. All these worries should be talked about with the surgeon, the doctor in charge of the anesthesia, and the neurologist. For me, the medical team also had to juggle the fact that I have anaphylactic level allergies, asthma, Asperger Syndrome, an anxiety disorder, and a sensory integration disorder. Because they had to deflate my right lung to get my thymus gland out, they had to send an occupational therapist into the critical care unit as soon as possible to get me to cough. If I could cough, my right lung could reinflate naturally, and that's what the doctors in the OT wanted. I was pretty whacked out on the morphine they gave me for pain management, so when the OT said, "Lewis, can you cough for me now?" I thought she said, "Lewis, can you for me now?" For the first time in months, both of my eyes opened wide. The doctors were quite impressed. My eyes were open, and no one said anything about my language. Although morphine is used for pain management, and I received morphine for my pain management, my mom says, a few hours after I was wheeled into critical care, I announced to the nurses that I did not want to become a drug addict, so they should cut back on the morphine and start giving me aspirin. Am I glad they didn't listen to me? And guess what? I'm not an addict. As soon as they were able, they moved me out of critical care and into intensive care. There was a tube in my chest to help drain fluid that was gathering in my chest. Every time I would move, I felt a lot of pain because the tube would get joggled. I want that tube out of there as fast as possible. So when the doctors agreed that time was right, they took it out. When they took the tube out, it hurt for about 20 seconds. I had a sharp pain, almost like someone had punched me in the stomach really hard. I took a deep breath in, and the tube was gone. During the time, I thought the pain would never stop. It was the longest 20 seconds of my life. But then I was fine. One of the things I hated was having to get up out of bed and move around a little bit, or else they had me sit upright in a chair for what I thought were long periods of time. At first, they only had me sit for periods of 15 minutes, but to me, it felt like hours. After a couple of days had passed by, I was able to sit up in the chair for a few hours before I got tired, and before the pain got really bad. The reason they have you move around as soon as possible after surgery is so the fluids don't collect in your tissues. You want to get all your fluids moving naturally through your body, and the only way that can happen is if you get up and move. Aside from that, you want to keep your muscular strength up, because if you sit in bed too long, your muscles can atrophy, and you can get bed sores. With H1N1 flu going pandemic on the day of my surgery, instead of keeping me at the hospital for 10 days, like they told my mom might happen, they sent me home quicker. The reason for this was because the germs in my own house are familiar with my body. The H1N1 germs at the hospital were dangerous for me. Remember, the thymus gland is an integral part of the immune system, and my thymus gland was gone. My secondary immune system hadn't quite kicked in yet, so the safest place for me was at home, away from the H1N1 virus. The doctors and I knew my mom could take good care of me. Even to this day, months later, my chest still hurts from time to time from the surgery. Although the surgery was quite scary, it was definitely worth going through. It sure beats all the crises I was going through. Does this mean I didn't have to go back to the ER? No, I still had some problems since then. But, good news, I hardly ever have to go up to emergency anymore. It's very confusing to read the statistics on what remission is when medical professionals talk about it. That's because there are so many different definitions for what remission is. Most professionals seem to agree that remission is when the patient does not have to take medication for myasthenia gravis anymore. My uncle was really lucky. He went into remission very quickly after his thymectomy in the 1970s. He never had to take any medication for his MG. I haven't been quite as lucky. After months, my symptoms are still very spiky, and my meds were increased just months ago. If things don't improve in the next couple months, my specialist is going to start me on IVIG treatments again at the hospital for sick children. This experience has been one of the most difficult experiences of my life, and anyone who has to go through this will probably have a difficult time. But the overall benefits made this a risk worth taking for me. Hopefully it'll be the same for anyone else who decides to get a thymectomy. Remember, a thymectomy isn't for everyone. Myasthenia gravis has no cure, and only you and your medical team knows what's best for you. My best wishes go out to everyone who's listening to this, and thank you for listening.
It is.